don't care. It was fun though. My daughter fell asleep in the game. I'm like,
Ahead of baseball game?
yeah, she slept through sleep for like, like the whole, I'm like, how do you sleep through all this?
Was that the Red Sox game or the Yankees?
It was both, Red Sox and Yankees.
I went to the Red Sox one time and it was at Fenway and it was
Fenway.
so cool. Yeah.
Like, it's,
Do you mind? This is just for.
Oh, yeah, yeah.
Throw that on your laptop, right?
Good. Iconic. Is that good? Does that work?
Yeah. And then here's your curtain.
Okay, how does it work? Which way?
Just down.
Oh, down, not.
Yeah.
There we go.
Yeah. And you won't have to worry about anyone on Zoom, so just the spirit.
I love that.
Yeah. It's like, hey, it's just one of the places. There's so much history there.
Thanks, Hunter.
Yeah.
Well, very cool. Yeah.
I'm gonna text Jasmine and see where the heck she is. She should be here.
Okay, I'm gonna put my phone here. I'm gonna make sure it's not gonna buzz because it'll shake the whole thing here. But like I said, I apologize. I've got a little bit of a frog in my throat today. I don't know why. So I'm gonna be cough drops and talking weird, but all right, we're gonna get started. I'm like, is that me? Am I losing my mind? I do hear an echo. Okay, that's good. That will drive me mad. I'll text Hunter.
So Drew, is it Drew or is it Andrew? Mine
Drew.
Drew.
Yep, just Drew. My uncle's named Andrew, so I'm named after him. They just worked it.
And so what's your middle name?
That's not. Oh shoot.
And it's Grew.
Yes, ma'am.
Holy cow. I don't have Hunter's number in my phone. Do you guys have Hunter's number in your phone? I don't have, I'm like, I have, like Hunter, because that, you can just text him and say, we have an echo from the laptop and it's going to make us all crazy.
Hi Hunter, hey, we have an echo from the
Laptop.
laptop. And it's starting to screen.
Okay, well, we'll get started. Oh my, that's just going to repeat everything I say. And that's okay. So, all right, we're going to start. You guys have got, you guys have gone through all these so far. You're getting to where you're actually going to work with buyers and sellers. And that's the fun part. Like, isn't that what you all want? Like, we want to work with buyers and sellers. And this is when you have the signed agreement with your buyer and you're going to work with the buyer or the seller. So tell me, since there's only a couple of you guys here today, tell me what kinds of things you would like to see today, learn. What kind of things are you hoping to get out of today's class? Thanks, Hunter. We're like, ooh. Yeah, what kind of things would you hope to get out of this class today about working with buyers and sellers? Hi, how are you? Remind me your name.
It's
Ari. I knew that. Sorry, I'm Amber. So yeah, we're just getting started. What kinds of things would you like to get out of today's working with buyers and sellers?
Or to just talk to, and not only win them over, but just connect.
Gain their
to
trust.
where
Yeah.
it can
Flow.
be a symbiotic
Okay.
relationship.
Okay.
How do you talk to them like when you're first going about getting these leads?
Mm,
Like, how do you make it so it's not like an awkward conversation? How do you make it organic?
right. Okay. And some of that we'll cover today, but we can always like do a Q&A and I'm good with that too. So, but here's what, I'm so sorry. I'm going to be clearing my throat all day. Millionaire Real Estate Agent says virtually every top producing agent we have ever worked with has a deep and almost inherent sense of service. They have a servant's heart and place their buyer or seller's real estate experience above all else. So they're always thinking about serving someone. So the point of the transaction that we're focusing on today is after you get that buyer's agreement or the listing agreement, but we can talk a little bit about that as well. Did you have anything, Ari, that you we're hoping to get from today's class?
I don't know, just here to learn.
Okay. All right. Sometimes you don't know what you don't know,
Yeah, exactly.
right? And that's okay. That's okay. So, all right. So we want when we have a client, we want to be successful with them. So this is kind of how we're going to go through. We're going to go through success with clients in general, success with buyers, success with sellers, success working with co-agents, and I'll tell you some stories about that from just this week. Then we'll go through the recap. We go till 11:30. Okay. And then you guys do that daily success. So let's cover some things that you guys can do with buyers and sellers. So the biggest thing, I don't know if you guys probably don't know. Drew doesn't know anyway. I got my real estate license when I was 22. So I've been doing this, do the math. I am going on 50 this year in June. And so I've been doing real estate more of my life than I haven't. And I love it. It's fun. I do love that I get to help people. And I feel like that's my job, to get them to the next phase of their life, whatever that is. And so but I started out 22 years old, and my husband and I had just bought our first place before I even got my real estate license. It was just a little condo. And I knew nothing about real estate. And I was 22 years old. Like, this is me when I was 22 years old. I felt like if I wore my glasses, I looked smarter. So I would wear glasses instead of contacts a lot, and I hate glasses because I felt like it made me look smarter. But the biggest thing that people want from us is communication. And actually the board of realtors, the state, did what do I call it, focus group last year, where they brought in people and talked to them, people who had recently bought or sold a home. And the biggest thing, they were like, we want to be able to trust our agent for sure. That was the number one, trust that they're going to work for you and do their best job. But communication is huge. It's shocking to me how many real estate agents do not follow through on communication. Or even, actually, the first house my husband and I bought, the condo that we bought, we called the listing agent. He never called us back. Never. We ended up having to go find an agent to see the listing to buy it. And he just lost himself some money there, right? We didn't know, we were young and dumb, and we didn't know any different. We would have just used him. And so, but I loved that our first real estate agent, she brought us in. She sat us down. We never met her before. We didn't know anything about her. And she said to us, okay, this is how I work. She sat us down, said, I work with buyers on a contract. And you guys are going to either work with me or you're not. And that's fine. But I need you to sign this contract. And if you're going to work with me. And we were like, well, we're a little hesitant. We don't know you. We don't know anything about this process. And she said, okay, I will take you out one time. I will show you 3 to 5 houses, whatever. And after that, you need to decide, are we working together or not? And I was like, okay, that gave us a little bit of peace, to where we were like, all right, we get in her car, we go see houses, and we got the chance to get to know her a little bit and feel more comfortable. It wasn't just and she explained, I usually try and explain to the buyers, hey, I work for you as a buyer's agent, but I don't get paid until you close. So it's not like when you walk into the store and they get paid by the hour. I don't get paid for taking you out to show you houses. No one pays my gas. No one pays my time. No one pays that. I only get paid if you buy a house and close. So letting that all be out in the open first, and explaining how we get paid, that it comes from the seller's brokerage, that generally most of the time the buyer's not going to have to pay anything out of pocket. That's always it reassures them. I still am surprised. I actually closed a house last month with buyers who were paying cash. They were older. They were older than me even. So they and they were buying this house. It wasn't their first house. They sold a house in Idaho and they were moving down here. And when they said, we want to see the estimate of the closing documents, and they're paying cash, so there's really no fees or anything like that, hardly. And he said to me, okay, so when we got it from title, he said, so then we add 5% to this, right? And I'm like, what do you mean? He goes, for the commission. He thought he was paying, because he just paid it as a seller, 5% on that end. He thought he had to pay it again on this end. I didn't explain that properly to him. I apparently just assumed his agent there explained it, or he knew, And he really thought he was going to have to pay an extra 5% for this house. And he was okay with it. Like he was prepared to do it. And I was like, darn, should have capitalized on that. But no, it just surprised me that someone of his age and experience level didn't realize that. So it's something that was a good reminder to me that we have to go through it with everybody. Like, don't just assume that they know, because they don't. So communication is the best thing. So obviously it does provide that strong foundation for trust and helps manage expectations proactively throughout the transaction, gives them peace of mind. Like if I would have addressed that with him sooner, it would have given him a lot more peace of mind, and it enhances your credibility. So talking about setting and managing expectations. So the first house I ever sold when I was 22 years old was to a friend of mine. It was just a little condo. We were all in that same age of life, stage of life. And they bought it. And I didn't realize, because I was a brand new agent, that they weren't going to get the keys to their house that day. Like, because it hadn't funded and recorded. The loan hadn't funded and recorded. So I didn't even know to communicate that to them, that like, hey, you'll get your keys tomorrow, or the next business day, because they closed on a Friday. And they had a gift from family where they actually put like $40,000 down on an $80,000 condo back a long time ago. And so they were actually kind of upset. They said, we just walked out having given $40,000 and we get nothing. Like, we have nothing to show for it. We don't have a key. And they were kind of upset because they weren't prepared. And that's your job as the agent, to prepare them for whatever's to come. Usually, if they're getting a loan, it can be the next business day. But nowadays, a lot of lenders will do same day funding. So I usually, a couple weeks before closing, I'll ask the lender, like, are you preparing to do a same day funding, or are you going to fund next day? And that way they know how their process works. But that way I can explain to my buyer, hey, we're scheduled to sign on a Friday. If you want to move in that weekend, we probably ought to bump that up to Wednesday just to be safe. Just give us a buffer day, because something could go wrong. Who knows? And that way they're prepared. Like, hey, I'm not going to get keys till it funds and records. Like, it's not my house until everything's done, right? So the worst one I ever, actually in our old KW building, I was in with a client in one of the conference rooms, and in the next conference room over, somebody was in there with their client. They were actually signing with the title company there at the office, and the title company was there. They were signing the closing. They were happy. And then all of a sudden, even from the next room over, I felt the energy shift. And I was like, and all of a sudden the seller, it was a seller, this one, the seller started getting really upset and started like getting loud. And they were like, well, you didn't tell me I needed to be out today. That's a big deal. Like, we're not ready. We're not, like, the buyer's ready to move in, but I'm not ready. Like, you need to make sure your client is prepared before they walk into the closing table, before they sign documents, because that transaction could have been amazing all the way through, but then you get to the end and you just killed it all because you didn't communicate that one major thing. So communication is huge. You can hardly ever over communicate. Usually when buyers and sellers are in the middle of this process, they have so much coming at them, they're going to forget things. I literally tell people the same. If it's an important thing, I'll tell them multiple times. I know I already told you this, but because they're going to forget. There's so much new, and the language is different than what they're used to dealing with on a day-to-day basis. It's funny because I have this client that's closing on Monday, buyer client moving from out of state. And he's started a new job here just like a week and a half ago. So he's in training, right? And so it's like and he works for an airline. So their training is pretty intense. And he's like, well, I'm not sure if I'm gonna be able to get off for the closing. I'm like, you have to get off for the closing. You have to be there to sign. And he's like, repeatedly said that to me, like probably 4 times. And I'm like, dude, you really have to be there. Like, there's no question, you have to be there. So he worked it out, but I'm like, I can't stress how important enough this is. We can't close without you. We need you there. So even though I told him like 3 times before that, he had to hear it a 4th time before it really sunk in that, oh, I don't have a choice. So different people are going to have different things that are important to them and different things that they are going to need to hear more than once. So the one that has come up a lot in my career is reminding people what they agreed to leave in the house, because they forget. Like let's say, for example, the fridge. They agreed in the contract to leave the fridge. We talked about it, but then when it comes time to closing, they have friends helping them move, and they just moved the fridge out, and now they're gone. Their moving truck is left, and so it becomes a really sticky situation. So usually about a week before closing, I actually have my assistant email them and tell them, like, here are the things you agreed to leave, and then it's in writing, and I can clearly back myself up, so I don't go buy a fridge, which I have done, unfortunately. But okay, so 3 levels of service we're working on is our purpose, our value proposition, and the fiduciary. So what do you guys think? Why do clients need us? Mm-hmm. Possibly, yeah. Some people are pretty sophisticated, but you know, it's good. They need a guide. They do need a guide. Apologize for the what else? Why do they need us? Because they do need us. Like, they really, really do need us. Or what do we offer? What's our value proposition? What do we bring to the table?
Knowledge, experience, understanding of laws, understanding of things that they might not see because we're seasoned to a point.
Yeah, knowing what
but
to
we
look
also
for.
Have connections with people that is what they do. So it's like, I'm just a conduit for anything else.
Yeah, and keep like knowing what to look for and knowing what questions to ask. That's definitely a value to our clients. And then the fiduciary. What does that mean? You guys know it's a word you had to learn in real estate school. What does it mean?
You serve them.
It's that's
Why
good.
do I
Yep.
not know? It's you serve them, but you are loyal to them first,
Yeah.
and you're completely trustworthy.
So I actually sit on the professional standards committee at the state. So I get to this is new for me. I get to hear if there are complaints against agents. They just had a training for us the other day, and they used real life scenarios from last year to train us. And one of them was that the seller was an agent. The seller was offering 2% BAC, and the buyer's agent didn't like that, right? They wanted 3. But the way they went about it, pushing, and like saying, we won't, well, I'll just sell them another house then. And, you know, just really made the offer contingent on them. You can't do that. Like you can ask for 3%. You can totally ask for 3%. You can ask for 5 if you want, but whatever, you know, it doesn't matter. There's no magic number. It's whatever you feel like you want to get. And if they don't agree to it, you can't make your client's offer contingent on that. That's being a fiduciary. You're putting their needs above your own. So it was really interesting because the way he went about it, it was over a period of like a week that he just harassed this agent and just really just kept saying, well, and they did get under contract and then they canceled because she wouldn't agree to it. The seller wouldn't agree to pay him 3%. So he just was bullying her to get more money for him when it may or may not have been the best thing. That, but highly productive agents are going to provide a level of service that makes people want to go back to you. I know that that buyer could sense something, you know, they weren't a part of the complaint or anything, but they can sense when something's weird, you know, and that buyer is not going to go back to that agent, in my opinion. The way I've built my business over this 28 years is repeat and referral. And that is the best business you can ever get, because when you get that call, they're like, hey, so-and-so just referred me to you, and they're already halfway sold on you. Like, even if they're interviewing multiple agents, you have an in. So that's what makes it come back around, is when you treat people well and you look out for their interests. So, okay. Functionary versus fiduciary, we kind of just talked about that. So functionary, anyone can fill out paperwork, anyone can do that. But the difference is that the fiduciary is a highly trusted position. It's a high trust relationship. So let's see. All right, we're gonna move on to, sorry guys, my throat is, I'm not sick, but like my throat is just, I'll quit apologizing. Okay, dual agency. This is allowed in the state of Utah. It is not allowed in our brokerage. So you cannot represent both a buyer and a seller in the same transaction. It doesn't even make sense. And whenever I tell people that, when I'm signing a listing or when I'm working with a buyer, like, hey, I won't represent you and the other party in the same transaction. Would you ever go in and rely on if you were in a lawsuit, would you rely on the other party's attorney to represent you? It does not make sense. They're looking for the best outcome for their client. You're looking for the best outcome for your client. So we just want to make sure, and it is really, truly, it can break that fiduciary. Hi, how are you? Good. It's competing interests. You have a buyer and you have a seller that want two totally different things. How could you represent their interests? You can't. And I will tell you my horror story. Before the brokerage stopped allowing it, I had years ago already decided I will never do it again, because if you ever take I teach the mandatory core class, and I tell this story with visuals and details and stuff. But so I had my husband's boss's house listed, which happened to be in my own neighborhood. And I got a phone call from a friend of mine who lived in the neighborhood that said, hey, my sister wants to come see this house. Great. So her and her sister came and saw the house. As they walked in the door, it's a neighbor. She's like, oh, whose house is this? And I told her it's, who it is. And they know that, it's hey, I actually said, like, really loudly, like, full disclosure, this is my husband's boss's house, right? So I wanted to be very, very clear that there was a relationship there, and it was a pretty strong one. Well, so my friend, her sister, I also have a good relationship with my friend, and her sister ended up wanting to buy the house, made an offer. We got under contract. Things were going great. We ended up getting a backup offer for more, right? And which is weird in that time. And then the buyer wanted to negotiate all these repairs. And the seller was like, no, he's just one of those guys. He's like, no, I'm not doing that. And she was very upset because she didn't think I pushed hard enough to get the repairs that she wanted, right? And then the appraisal came in low, and like $17,000. It wasn't a ton for a $650,000 house, but $17,000 came in low. She wanted me to go negotiate the price down $17,000. And I told her up front, I'm like, I know Dennis, he will not. Like, he will not. First of all, we have a backup offer that's higher. So if you want to lose this house, you can, because I'm representing your interests at this time and trying to represent both. But she was so angry that he wouldn't come down $17,000, and that was all on me. So now I have this relationship with a soon-to-be neighbor and my husband's boss that's really becoming uncomfortable. And she actually said to me at that point, well, you never told us he was your husband's boss. And I was like, whoa, 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 whoa. That was like the first thing I said but they forgot, and all of a sudden they're upset and they're like pushing it all on me. It's all my fault. And I was like, ooh, I will never put myself in this position again. That was years and years and years ago. And I was like, nobody can get me to do this again, because it's not worth it. It is not worth the extra money. It is not worth my reputation in my neighborhood, because I was so worried that, like, they're going to talk. My friend and her sister are going to talk to everybody in the neighborhood and tell them what a dummy I am, or what, you know, how terrible of an agent I am. And my reputation in my neighborhood is big to me. Like I've sold a lot of homes in my own neighborhood. So that was my big deal where I was like, never again. There are ways to get around it. If the buyer doesn't have an agent, you can always have them be unrepresented, like if they choose that, or you can refer them to someone else who's going to pay you a referral fee. Anyone have questions on that? It really can endanger your license. Bless you. Like if somebody is, I mean, if she had complained about me to the division, like I would have had to prove, I lost sleep over that. I'm not going to lie, because I was so worried that she was going to allege that I had not represented her properly. When I really, honestly, she wanted the house. We had a higher backup offer. I really was representing her interests because I knew the seller would not do that. So,
Great illustration.
yeah, what not to do.
Equated it to lawyer.
Yeah.
That was beautiful.
And I'll tell buyers that too when they walk in my office, like, if, you know, before we sign an agreement, like, would you ever walk into a courtroom and rely on the other party's attorney? Never. You would never do it. But people do it all the time with listings, and it's not, and I say, not, obviously I'm not a lawyer. I'm not trying to compare myself to a lawyer, but you wouldn't do that. You just wouldn't. So, the other hard part about dual agency is you owe confidentiality to both parties. And it's sometimes easy to let things slip that you shouldn't. So you just have to be careful. Okay, so we're not going to work both sides of the deal, right? We're going to set expectations. And we're going to communicate, and we're going to educate people on what we do and why. A lot of our clients, this is something they've never done, bought or sold a house before. Even like some of my sellers who are older, I sold one, I think a year ago. They had been in the house like 50 years, like literally had never sold a home before. This was their home, first home they bought, and they had never sold a home before. So it was a scary experience for them. You know, a lot could go wrong, and we have to manage that and set the expectations of what is going to happen and what could happen. Like sometimes we don't know. And so, hey, I don't know what could happen here. The market's weird. I've never seen a market like this before. Even after 28 years, I tell people that now. I'm like, this market is strange. I have never seen anything like it, and I can't predict what might happen next. So we'll do the best we can. We'll work together on it. We'll keep in touch. But most people only, at the most, do this about every 8 years. So, okay. All right. So here's the process that we're going through. We're good. Usually I do like, and I had a lender friend of mine that had a great like illustration of this that I wish I could copy, but I just haven't taken the time to do it, where he took it like a journey, an airplane trip. And he made it like an illustration, like, here's the process. You know, first you're going to book the ticket, you know, you're going to do this. And then I loved it because he's like, you know, you're going to start this process. You're going to get on the board. You're going to do this. You're going to do that. And then they're going to bring you a drink. And then there's turbulence and your drink spills on you. Like, it's just like setting that expectation. There's always something that goes wrong. There's always people who are like, one little thing goes wrong. They're like, oh, wasn't meant to be. And they just shut down. And like, you're like, no, if you set that expectation up front, like, here's what's going to happen. Like almost always something happens that's unexpected. Very, very rarely do we go into this process and like, it's as smooth as silk, you know, it's very rare. So even once we go under contract with a buyer, I'll send them an email that says that, like, hey, here's your next steps. Just be aware things are going to come up, and we're going to do our best to mediate them or take care of them, but things are going to come up. So what questions do you guys have about this process? Isn't it? It's awesome because people can relate to it. You know, like, yeah, I wish I remember exactly how he said it. I don't even think, this is how long ago it was. I don't even think he's still in the business. don't even remember who it was, but it was a great, like, I don't even remember who it was, to be honest. Like, I just remember him telling me that, but I'm trying to think who it was that told me that, and I'm blank. Yeah, maybe. Okay, so you're, go ahead. So you're gonna,
Say, I mean, how you said to them, you need to get pre-approved before.
yeah.
You say that.
Oh yeah, absolutely. Like, I usually use the term because I don't want people to feel like, a lot of times people are feeling really anxious about their money. So I'll usually use the term like, hey, I want you to talk to a lender so you know what payment you're comfortable with, not what you qualify for, because you might qualify for $1 million and you only want to spend 400,000 because that's the payment you're comfortable with. So that's, again, letting them know you're on their side. Like, I'm not going to try and sell you the biggest house I possibly can so I can earn the highest commission possible. I want to do what's right for you. And if you tell me I want my payment to be this, then I'm going to help you get there. So, okay. So, yes, I do tell them that. Or I also tell them, hey, I don't want you to fall in love with a home that you can't have. You know, that's a danger. If we go out, start looking at homes today, and you're like, I think I can afford up to 750,000, but then we go out and look at $750,000 homes, and next week your lender says, actually, you only qualify for 600. Then you're gonna, anything we look at after that is gonna pale in comparison. You're gonna be like, oh, this is not as nice as that $750,000 home. Of course it's not. It's a $600,000 home. So, and then when I set up like hot sheets or alerts for my sellers or buyers rather, I usually ask them, okay, big pet peeve of mine. If you watch any like HGTV or some of those house hunters shows, this is a huge pet peeve of mine. They're like, okay, our budget is 600,000. And then the agent shows them a house that's like 800,000. I'm like, what are you doing? Like so I always ask them, like, is it okay? And it depends on the market too. Like, is it okay with you if we just put your listing criteria up to, I don't know, well, like 50,000 higher, just to see? We may be able to negotiate a lower price. In this market, not so much. But I recently had that happen. Actually, buyers were like, they wanted to look up to 600,000, but then they changed their criteria after they started seeing what was available in their price range. They're like, actually, we could afford 750 and we want to go that high because we're not seeing anything we like. So that's on them, not on me pushing them into something they're not comfortable with. Right. So, and setting expectations of how quickly they might need to go see these homes, depending on the price range, depending on the market. Like, people were, a couple years ago when people were like, I want to go see that house on Friday. It's not going to be there on Friday. You need to go see it today if you're interested at all, and you need to be ready to make an offer. And I always tell them, that's not pressure from me as your agent. That's pressure from the market. Market conditions are saying, if you want this house, we need to go look today. And if you want it, we need to make an offer today, because otherwise we're going to lose out, right? It depends. Like, some price ranges, like I'm seeing multiple offers in the lower price ranges, and unique properties. Like, I just had one listed this week it's 825,000, but it's on 2 acres in Pleasant Grove. That one, I had an agent schedule an appointment for later in the week. I'm like, it's not going to be here. Like, it's gone. So it just depends on the property and what they're looking for. And then just letting them know, like, hey, you guys have to be flexible with me. I'll be flexible with you. But that's the hard part as an agent, is sometimes we need to be ready to go. Like, I don't want my client to lose out on a house because I'm at my kids, whatever. So always have a backup plan. Like, who else could show this for me if I'm not available? Because I'm not going to miss. I've gotten to the point where I'm like, I'm not going to leave my kids. My kids are grown up now, but like, I would leave my kids' karate tournament, go show a house, and come back and miss my kids, because it goes all day long, and miss my kids' thing. I'm not doing that anymore. I'm like, to the age, I'm not doing that, So I'll find someone else who will do it for me. So, but it's hard because people get stressed out, and like, if they feel pressure, it stresses them even more. So that's why I always have to tell them, like, hey, it's not me pressuring you into something, it's the market. Like, it's just what it is. And I used to, with buyers, I used to tell them way back in the day, like, hey, my job is to get you the best deal that is humanly possible on this house. Where the last couple years, when it was so crazy and there were like 20 offers on every house, I was like, you know what? The best deal might be you have a house to live in. Like, it might not be the price, but you have a house, you know? So just setting expectations there. Okay. So, okay. So the example they use in here is, if I asked you, what are you going to have for dinner a week from today? Would you know? No. Like, I don't think that far advance. I don't even know what I'm having dinner for tonight, you know? But it's because we just don't think that far in advance. And with a house, like, they're just thinking of right here, right now, like immediate needs. So you're much more interested in the things that are right in front of you. So, okay. Time expectations. Okay, so we kind of talked about this already, about like making sure, like, if we're going to set up a search and they're going to see houses that move quickly, we need to be ready for it. And just like timing of closing and everything like that, like preparing them for that. So we kind of talked about that already. Documents. Everybody's different on this, but I have had some buyers like ask me in the past if they could take a blank copy of the contract and look it over before they ever fill one out. Okay, sure. But you need to be able to communicate the contract to people in a way that it makes sense to them. So what are some other documents that you guys would need when you get to go over with clients? Just besides the contract. Mm-hmm. Absolutely, leather-based paint. Obviously, we need if we're a buyer, we need buyer broker agreement and the buyer due diligence. So the buyer due diligence, if you haven't seen it, it's like 3 pages long. And the way I explain it to my clients is, when we're filling out the buyer broker agreement, I say, you know, hey, we're going to things come up in every real estate transaction. This buyer due diligence is saying, these things are your responsibility to check into. I can help you. I can help you find the right people, but it ultimately comes up to you and what you want to find out. And that's their responsibility. But I go through that and say, so these are 3 pages of things. Basically, you're not going to take my word for it. I'm not a home inspector. I'm not a tax advisor. I'm not a lawyer. So you're going to look at these things and say, Amber, is there mold in this house? And I'm going to say, I don't know, let's call a mold inspector. You know, these are things that may come up in the process, and we'll find the right person to answer those questions for you. But I'm not it. That's what the buyer due diligence is saying. It's protecting you from them coming back and saying, how come you never told me this house has radon? I told you it's something that might come up and that you should check if you're interested in it. You know, then you're covered on that form. What about lead-based paint? What about like property disclosure documents? This is another story that I have, I'll tell you. So I had a client that they were buying a house, and the seller disclosures said that the basement had flooded before. It was very vague. It was very short. And my clients didn't question it. They didn't they didn't ask any more questions. They were just like, oh, okay, basement's flood. We get all the way to the closing. We signed on a Friday afternoon. They were going to fund and record on Monday, but the sellers had already moved out, and they had kind of become cozy, like friends with the buyer over the process as a buyer. So they said, you guys can go ahead and move in this weekend. Like, we know you're in a hotel and we know you know, we're gonna let you move in this weekend. And so my clients were like, yes, awesome, this is great. My clients start moving in, the neighbors come over and start helping them move in. And the neighbors say, now, did they tell you about the basement? And my clients were like, yeah, they told us it flooded once. They were like, hold on, they told you what? They're like, every single spring, the whole neighborhood is over there bailing that basement out because the runoff from the mountain comes right down, and the way their yard is landscaped, it comes right in their basement every year. And they're like, well, they didn't tell us that. It's, so letting them know, like, it's kind of your job to ask the questions, ask more about it. And like that one, we actually backed out, even though they had already signed. We backed out and found them a different home, and it got kind of ugly, but could have easily been solved just by asking a few questions before, and we could have backed out, wouldn't have been any big deal. So that's pretty important. And so actually, so the next house they bought, they got the seller disclosure document, and they asked me, have you reviewed it? And I said, that's your job to review it. Like, they were trying to put it back on me a little bit, and I'm like, no, that's your job. And actually, so my husband's boss's house that I told you about, that was another thing that came up. Was, so I live in Saratoga, and some of the homes that were built in that area in that time frame like shifted, the soils shifted, and they needed to put in helical piers, which are like 150 grand, like very expensive because the houses were settling badly. So my buyer client asked me, have they had helical piers put in? And the seller had bought it bank owned, so they didn't know. So I called the city. This was a prime example of why not to do this. I called the city and said, hey, here's the address. Do you know if this house has had helical piers? The city said, yes, it has. And then the buyer called the city a couple days later, asked the same question, got a completely different answer. They said, no, it hasn't had helical piers put in. I'm like, wow, that just made me look like a complete liar. And that's what they told me. And so I won't make those calls anymore. I'll be like, here's the number you call. Because I don't want to be relaying information that I got that was bad information. Like, if they do that due diligence, it's on them, right? So, okay. So at every stage of the process, you're going to review with your client kind of where things are going, what are the next steps, what they should be aware of, and what's going to happen. You want to make sure they know what's going to happen before it does. I feel like if my clients have to ask me a question about something like that, like, hey, when's the appraiser going to come, or something like that, they've been thinking about it much longer than they picked up the phone to call or text me. And I feel like I've failed if I haven't prepped them for that. Like, if they have to ask me questions, I should be keeping them in the loop before they ask the question. That's the way I feel. So future pacing, like, hey, this is next, this is after that. And then probably one of the biggest frustrations that buyers have is not understanding how long the seller has to respond to the offer. So, question, in Utah, do offers have a response time? Kind of. Oh, I know, it's kind of a trick question. But when you make an offer and that last page, it says acceptance deadline. So that's the deadline for the seller to accept the buyer's offer. It does not necessarily mean they have to respond by that time. No response is a response, but also if they're going to counter that, I mean, so, okay, so let's say we made an offer today. We said, okay, you have till tomorrow at 5 p.m. to accept our offer. Okay, so what if they wait till 7 p.m. and then they send over a counter offer? No, it doesn't have to be by 5. As long as, I mean, the counter offer, so at 5 o'clock, that offer basically becomes void. But by 7 o'clock, when they send over the counter, it brings it back to life, I guess is the way to say it. And then the buyer has the option to move forward or not. So sometimes that's confusing, and sometimes buyers get really frustrated when we don't hear back. And some agents are better than others at communicating. Like, I had one recently, actually, the buyer's from Idaho, where we made our offer and the listing agent just never communicated anything. And so I was like hounding her, like, hey, our deadline to accept was 5 o'clock yesterday. What's going on? Like, I never heard from you at all. Like, and she's like, oh, the seller got in a car accident. I'm like, you could have just told me that. Like just communicating that would have made a huge difference in how my buyers dealt with that experience. So, all right. Okay, and then communication expectations. A lot of people are okay with text, and that's good and that's easy. But some people don't prefer it. And especially hard conversations, text is not the best place to have that. So, but asking people up front, like, how do you like to be communicated with? What's easiest for you? I mean, I know you work this, whatever. Is it easiest for me if non-urgent things, if I email them to you? Or this is a friend of mine sold a house in New York, upstate New York, and she was married and she was the only one on title. And the agent kept texting her husband and only her husband, who wasn't even an owner of the house. And she kept asking him, like, just text us both. So we all are in the loop and we all know what's going on. And he just never did. And she was so frustrated with that agent because he just wanted to talk to the man. And she just was like, no, he doesn't even own the house. Like, I own the house before we even got married. Like, it was just so frustrating. So listen to the client and listen to what they want. Try and, have those expectations, but also set expectations about how you communicate. Like, I do tell my clients, like, hey, after about 8:30 at night, my brain just shuts off. So if you text me or call me, I'll see it the next morning. There's a chance I might see it that night if I'm still working or still waiting for a kid to get home from somewhere or something like that. But just don't expect me to respond if you send me a text or call me at 8:30 at night or after. Because people will call. I've had clients call me at 1:30 in the morning. And there is absolutely no reason for that call. They called to tell me they were done painting. And I was like, thanks. I thought someone died. Like, why am I getting a phone call at 1:30 in the morning? So explaining to them, like, that my phone just goes off and my brain shuts off. I'm not going to be any good to you at that time of night. Like, just, I cannot do anymore. So those are some expectations you can set with your clients on what works for you and what works for them.
So you tell them it shuts off at 8?
Yeah, I say around 8:30, 9 o'clock, just depending on the day and depending on how much energy I have or whatever. Yeah, well, I tell them, like, there's a chance I might get back to you if I'm in the middle of something. Like, I've had where I am writing an offer at 8:30 at night. Well, obviously we're going to talk, but it's like, if you're just texting me to tell me, hey, can we check out these houses in 3 days? I'll get back to you tomorrow. Like, like, it depends on the urgency level. But honestly, like, I do put my phone on absolute silent. Like, I don't even have it on vibrate, nothing. And it just goes away. Because otherwise I would be up all night worrying about things. So just having that plan, and then setting contingency plans. This is where, okay, so let's say here's the example they give. Your sister's getting married and it's on May 1st, and you started working with these buyers right now, like February, March. You already know there's going to be a wedding. You're going to be out of town. Something's going to happen. And so just telling them, like, hey, I usually am working unless I'm on a beach somewhere, or that's kind of my expression. And people laugh a little bit like, oh yeah, we don't want you working when you're on the beach. But like, communicating that, like, but I do have someone who will back me up. So you'll never be without, someone who can show you a home if needed, because we don't want them to miss out on that. So, and I don't want them to feel like they have to find another agent. Like, I want them to know that up front. Here's a contingency plan. I got you covered. Don't worry. Okay. All right. Oh, and sometimes buyers and sellers don't understand the urgency of, like, them getting things, or like, I've had to help the lender before because the lender's like, they're not getting me the documents I need in a timely manner. Like, they're not understanding. And so then as an agent, like, I'm not the lender, but I'm going to help them understand, like, hey, the lender really needs these things right now so that your loan goes along the right process, and doesn't slow it down. So questions? I'm like speeding through here, guys. Sorry, lots to do. Any questions or comments or ahas while I put another cough drop in? Okay. How do you guys feel comfortable like going out and showing homes? Have you done it yet? Anyone? Not yet.
Supposed to do it 10 of them this weekend.
There you go. So
Does
we
it matter who we show?
yeah. Show your kids.
So when you show a home, do you, this is a good question.
Good question, yeah.
people,
Mhm. You're good.
Do you have to make appointments in advance?
Mhm.
Or what I'm saying is that, so are you simply looking for open houses or are you?
Oh,
calling to make
for your
appointments?
criteria for the Ignite. I think it's you can just do open houses for that.
I mean, Angie said the other day to do 10 homes this Saturday.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm like, okay. And then I didn't think, am I supposed to make an appointment or do I?
So what I would do in that case is, yes, I would look for open houses or I would look for homes that are vacant. So you're not making
Okay.
sellers like
Yes.
leave and do all this work when they're like, it's not really a buyer. You know what I mean? Because they're going to be calling you back going, so what'd your buyer think? And you're like, it was just me having a good time, having a good, checking out the house kind of thing. A lot of them will say vacant, like in the comments of how to show it. So you can definitely find that there. It's definitely good. Okay. So market expectations. I just tell people markets can shift on a dime. The day the world shut down with COVID, I had listed a house that morning and that totally changed our expectations of what might happen. And so we had this house listed. It was a Wednesday. I still remember the Jazz game was scheduled for that night and then Jazz game got canceled and then literally the world shut down, right? That listing, my clients were calling me, what do we do? What do we do? And I'm like, just be calm. They had to move. It wasn't like just cause they were moving out of state to Michigan. And I was like, just be patient. Luckily for me and for them, I had lived through a lot of weird things in real estate, but really, truly, nobody knew what was going to happen. That was the weirdest. And I had buyers that were under contract on a house at that same time that were like, should we back out? Should we? I'm like, just take a beat. Just relax for a second and let's just see. And both of those clients, the seller and the buyer, ended up being great. We ended up getting multiple offers on the seller's house, but it took a couple weeks because people were not sure they wanted to go look at houses for a minute. They just wanted to stay home and hunker down. And then my buyer, they closed on that house, turned around and sold it a year later for $150,000 more. So I'm like, when that happened and they sold it with me, I was like, aren't you glad you waited and just chilled for a second and let it ride, see what happens. So that's our job too, I think, is to keep people calm. There's a lot of emotions going on in the whole transaction and keeping people calm with the changing markets that we live with and have to deal with. It can be a big, huge thing. It can buy you a lot of referral and repeat business. I had a client, lots of stories. Sorry, guys. Hopefully they help you. Client that was moving here from Texas. They were moving here and they were selling their house in Texas and buying one here. Everything was going great. And then they called me up. I still remember I was walking at Utah State campus on a tour with my son. We were kind of done with the tour, but we were still walking around campus. And we were like, the client calls me. Actually, he texts me and says, I think we need to kill the deal on the purchase. I'm like, what do you mean? So I called him up. I'm like, why would we need to kill the deal? And he goes, our buyers down here in Texas need an extension to close. I was like, okay. He just thought this was the end of the world. How much of an extension are we talking about? Are we talking a month? Are we talking 2 months? What are we talking? He's like, they need a week. I was like, is that all? Like, I can deal with a week. I can buy you 2 weeks if we need. Like, I can get that negotiated with we're this far along in the process. Like, we had already done inspections, appraisal. Like, we were that far along in the process. And the market was such that a seller was not going to say no to a 1 week extension to get it closed. But in his mind, this had gone off the rails because the buyer on his house in Texas needed more time. And I was like, that's no big deal. But he's an airline pilot. He's one of those that, like, you have to check every single box and it has to be checked on time. I just sold their house last spring and helped them build another one up in Highland. And they still talk about that, like how you just kept it calm. Like, but I could have freaked out and been like, what do you mean? We it's just keeping everybody in the process, making sure they, that was in his best interest. That was in his best interest to keep the deal together. And so we did. We kept it together. We bought him an extra week. No big deal. It wasn't even hard. So, but to him, that was like the end of the world. Just the way he works and the way he goes through things. So, but we also want to be real with people and let them know if things are happening in the market. We don't want to have them be surprised when towards the end of COVID, when things were kind of getting weird and the interest rates started going up. I had a seller, we had just listed their house, and we listed their house, the exact same house on the exact same street had recently sold, I think, for $580. So we listed at $575 thinking, that's great. We're under, and the market was kept going up. So I'm like, we're under, but then interest rates started going up really quickly. I remember it was July and they went up really fast. And like all of a sudden, no buyers were looking at the houses, like nothing, like it was just complete silence. And builders in the area started like dropping the prices of their house, like 50 grand, like overnight. And we were competing with these builders. And I had to tell them, like, hey, we have not had one showing. And obviously 575 is not the deal we thought it was. So we need to lower it. This is what the market's doing. I'm going to show you, I'm going to tell you, and translating the market. Like, we can show them, but like, this is what that means for you. Like, hey, Edge is building all these homes that are really similar to yours, and yours is 15 years old. People are going to buy Edge over you every day. We can't compete with that. And they've just dropped their prices to now they're under yours. So we need to lower your price. And it was just, again, on a dime. Like, it was literally over a week period where things just went from being super busy to like, nobody's looking. Can't predict it, can't tell what's going to happen. We're just got to do what we can to keep the market, keep them apprised. We ended up selling that house, I think, for like $545. But it was kind of depressing for the seller who thought they were going to get $575. And it took us much longer. I think it took us like 3.5 months to get an offer. So, but again, staying in touch with them and keeping them apprised of everything as it goes along, and like letting them know you're doing the homework of what's happening in the market, even though you're already listed. Like, I've had some agents before where they're like, they list a house and they just never again look at what's going on in the market, and things can dramatically change quickly. So, okay. Are we on time? Okay, we're good. So, setting expectations, KW Tech. Obviously, you guys learning a lot about that and how that's helping you. I'm not going to get into too many details with that, but there's a lot of good things you can use. Okay, referrals. My favorite people in the world are those that come to me and say, so-and-so told me to call you. I need to buy a house. I need to sell a house, whatever. So how do you get that? You provide value. You ask your clients for help, and then you reward the people who do help you. So you are providing value through the process, and you're going to look for ways to, I'm not great at this, I'll admit, like ask them for referrals, but I do in more subtle ways than like, hey, who do you know that wants to buy or sell real estate? But almost 70% of sellers who used an agent found their agent through a referral from a friend or family member. Probably really similar for buyers too. So obviously we're going to provide value. This obviously shows like the time of when this happened. This was a really long time ago, but I had my sister, my younger sister, who's kind of a ditz. Her best friend from college was wanting to buy a condo. And I was like, kind of in my mind, I'm like rolling my eyes like, Allison's friend, this is going to be fun, you know? And it was like $100,000 condo. Like this was a long time ago. That's how you can tell how long ago it was. So it was a $100,000 condo. But at the same time, she's my client. And whether she's my sister's dippy friend or whatever, right? I'm still going to treat her really, really well. Whether she's 100,000 or 1,000,000 or 3,000,000, whatever. So little did I know at that time, they were like just getting out of college and stuff, my sister and her friend. And her friend has become over the years one of my greatest referral sources. From that $100,000 condo, I've sold millions and millions and millions of dollars of real estate. She's become like this really highly respected professional in her field. And she has referred doctors to me. She's referred like teachers and professors. Like she's highly respected in her field. And here I was like, oh, it's just my sister's dippy friend. You know, like in my mind, I had to take that out of the equation and be like, she's my client. How can I provide value to her? And then reward her when she does send me referrals. That's what I love that. People don't expect it and you can't really ask for it because in Utah, you can't ask for it. But if people send me a referral, even if I don't even get an appointment, like even if I can't even get in the door, I'll still send them something, a gift card. One time, a client referred me her son who never even called me, but I was like, I sent her some crumble cookies and I said, that's the way the cookie crumbles. You know, it's all good. I really appreciate you thinking of me. You know, and that to her was a big deal. She's referred tons more people to me. Lately, I've been, it's kind of a weird one, but I have this like yellow box or gift bag and I put all kinds of things. If you've ever seen like a sunshine box kind of thing where everything in it is yellow, like it's like a gift box, but on the envelope, I say it really brightened my day that you sent me so-and-so. And now I want to brighten yours. So, and they love it. Like people think that's the greatest thing ever. Like it's not even that expensive. Sometimes I'll put a gift card for, if I can find like Cheesecake Factory has a yellow gift card, I'll put that in there if it's a really good referral or something like that. But just that little thing has gotten me tons of referrals as well. Because people remember it. When you send them a gift card or when they remember that next time. I actually had one client one time say, oh, I'll totally refer more people to you because like I sent them, they were a young couple and I sent them a date night, like dinner and a movie, like gift cards. Like, and he was like, oh yeah, I would totally.
You spend or when you
I probably spent $70 on that, you know, worth it to me to make a couple
because that's impressionable.
Mhm.
Because I was thinking, all right, well, what do? Send them a swig card? No.
It depends.
No, because that would be insignificant.
Right.
Like,
Yeah.
All right, I got a little $25, $10 thing.
So clients that
it needs to be significant enough that it's going to be like, whoa, babe.
thank you. Yeah, we want them to appreciate us. Recently, so the clients that were referred to me by another client, I just got them little Trader Joe's chocolates and with a gift card for Tsunami, $100. And they were like, we love chocolates. We love sushi. You know, like, wouldn't that be really nice? Like $100. And I can't even tell you, like the commission that I'm making off of that deal is like 15 grand. So, I mean, it's worth it. Even if I feel like even if those deals don't close, like it's worth it for building my business in the long term. And it does matter. People care. So. And like, no, okay, so this is I'll tell you guys, when I was 22 years old and I got into real estate, no one taught me to teach it, to treat it like a business. I never kept track of people. I never did a good job staying in touch with people. I've lost a lot of people that I should have stayed in touch with just because I was just floating around. No one ever taught me like you guys are being taught to treat it like a business and keep in touch with people. So my database is only like, I want to say 400. That's, I mean, it's not that many. I should have
Do
thousands
you?
or more.
do you keep in- Are you on it, honestly? Like, do you do the 36 touches? Because I think that is
It's great.
much, too much.
It's a lot. And I'll admit, I'm not
Well,
that
you have- because you've
consistent.
already established. I still think that's a lot.
It is a lot.
I mean,
And you can overdo it for sure. People can get annoyed by too much contact. But I do personally, I do a couple things. So I have a magazine that goes out to, it's kind of expensive, but not terrible. Every other month. It looks really good. It's very professionally done. I think I spent on the last one like $370. It goes to like 100 of my clients. So per client, like probably, I don't know, $3 or $4 a person. But it has my face on the cover, my logo on the cover. So every time they see that, even if it goes straight in their trash,
Wait, it was how much?
it's probably $3 or $4 a copy.
It was
But
1,000.
no, like 400, 370 or something like that
370, sorry.
for about 100.
I didn't get any stuff.
You're
So
good.
My brain is half mess.
So that is my one like consistent thing that I don't have to think about. It just goes out every other month.
Every other-
And that's my most consistent thing.
Do you have a magazine?
I don't get a copy myself because I don't want to pay for it. But I can, it's called Reminder Media. And it's called At Home, I think, or something like that. And so it's all about their house. It's about real estate. It's like relevant information.
It's theirs?
I mean, like it's about house design and gardening and like I don't have to do
It's like
anything.
Better Homes
Kind of, yeah. Yeah. And it's
But-
really,
but
really
it
well
has
done
you
on the front.
Always?
Always my face and my logo on the front. So
Is it the same one or do you do a different picture? every month?
same, consistent. Keep it consistent. Like I want them to see that picture and go instantly, that's me. I can show you a mock-up of it. Because they send me, I can choose a different cover. Like that's the hardest part of it. Every other month when it comes out, I get to choose which cover I want it to be. So if I like this picture better than that picture,
Do you notice, are you tracking? Is it working?
I am not like tracking it, but I notice when it goes out because I know what day it hits their mailbox. I do get people call me, hey, my brother needs to buy a house, or,
Wow.
because or just over the years, like people have gotten it from me now for probably 3 or 4 years. They're not going to forget me. There's no way. They can't forget me. And
And you
especially,
think that's soft touch,
yeah,
that
it's
really-
easy.
that
And it's
is-
something like a
they
value.
appreciate.
Yeah, it's
house.
valuable. Yep, we're thinking about your house. We're thinking about, how things go with your house. And, there's subtle things in there. Like if you're thinking about selling, here's how you declutter, that kind of thing. It's all relevant to real estate. So,
So
and
you
then-
do the magazine. What
and then
else?
I do the events.
And do you like the events? Because to me,
Tell me.
like y'all wanna know.
Yeah.
But to me, I'm like, gosh, really? I mean, that's a lot of money to spend, number one. Number two, is it really relevant in getting business? It's like,
It can be. And I feel like anything I can do to keep my face in front of people is helpful.
well, okay, I guess what I'm talking about is like the pumpkin patch.
Mhm. Oh, yeah.
Or
Summit Splash.
Summit
Yeah, I
Splash.
lose those. My clients love them.
They do.
They love them.
I went to a video for Jackie
Hmm.
recently. There was a ton of people there. Like it was super fun too.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So the first, before I even came over to KW, so like I said, I was at a different brokerage that taught me nothing, right? I was just floating along, hoping people wanted to buy or sell a house and would call me. Really did very, very little like marketing or anything. And I did my first event when I was over there before I came. Actually, no, it was right when I came to KW because I was like, I need to do something to let my clients know I'm still here for them, even though I've changed brokerages, right? So I did this movie event. It was a Star Wars movie, probably 7 years ago, yes. And invited all my clients, rented out the whole thing. I think I spent like $2,000 roughly, which was a lot of money. Like for me at the time, I was like, oh, wow, that's so much money. I also did it as like, hey, come to the movie, bring a canned food item, you know, but the movie's free. Just bring. It was a Star Wars one. I can't remember which one, to be honest. And then so they'd come, they'd bring an item. I gave them my new card. Hey, I'm at KW now, but I'm still here for you. And then on a couple, I had like 5 cards where on the back of it there was a sticker. And I made an announcement like, okay, if you have a sticker on the back of your card here, you're going to get a gift card to go get concessions. Because I didn't do any concessions or anything like that. So it was really, really well received. A couple of my clients that I had not seen in years, at that point, I'm already doing real estate 20 years, right? I had not seen them in years. They came, they were like, it's so good to see you. Da, da, da. You know, they were really sweet. And luckily I remembered their names because that long without having seen them. Yeah. They, 6 months later, called me. And I know that if I had not had that event, they would not have remembered me because I barely remembered them. You know what I mean? Like if I barely remember them, they're not going to remember me. And I sold their house, made a decent chunk of change that more than paid that $2,000. So yeah, I do believe events can be successful. And it's just how you do them. But yeah, so that's really, and then I do a couple other things that are more spontaneous. Like, for example, for me, it has to be like a natural, organic thing. Because if it's forced, I feel forced and I feel fake. And I don't like feeling fake.
Wait a minute, say that again.
It has to be organic. Like it just has to be something that makes sense to me. So certain clients, as we talk about things, as we get to know them a little bit, certain things come up. So one of my clients, for example, I subscribe to flights from home, right? It's dangerous. It's really, really dangerous because I always want to go everywhere. Everywhere they send me a deal to, I'm like, oh, it's dangerous. But I had a client that moved here from Wisconsin. They were, missing family back home, and a deal came for Wisconsin. And I just was like, hey, I was thinking of you guys today. Look at this deal to Wisconsin. You can fly home for $300 or whatever. Just those kind of things where it's real, thoughtful, and organic, not just like, hey, who do you know that wants to buy or sell a house? That would drive me. I actually had an insurance guy that did that to me all the time, called me all the time. I never will answer his calls, never. Because I'm like, I don't have time for this garbage. Like I've got a job to do. Yeah, like he's just not getting my anything. And I would not refer him to anyone because I don't want my people to be bugged like that. Like if you're my friend and I told you to call him and then he's calling you all the time, bugging you, no, I don't want that associated with me. Okay, so we're going to probably run out of time if we don't. No, you're good. No, questions are good. I'm glad we're asking questions because it helps get to the root of it.
So is this program you put together or is this in the Ignite?
Oh, this is just in Ignite. Yeah. I mean, but it's what I do. So, okay. Reviews. I'm terrible at asking for reviews. I've tried to get a little bit better at it lately, especially when I know I've gone above and beyond. I had a seller recently that they had this house rented for 20 years. They'd never stepped foot in it since the day they bought it 20 years ago. They lived out of state and they need it. The first time I walked in it, I was like, oh boy, this house needs some love, But I was very honest with them. I took pictures because they're not here and sent them to them saying, this needs to be addressed, this needs to be addressed, this needs to be addressed before we even get it on the market, right? And one of the things was silly, but it was the stove had a light, like it was on, on all the time. Like that light just would not, and the stove was 15, 20 years old and it was a cheap stove. We just need to replace that stove. Okay, so she's out of state. How's she going to do that? So I met the people. I helped her pick out the stove. I helped her. I met the people at the house when they delivered it. I did, all this stuff. I helped her find a landscaper to clean up the yard because the yard looked like garbage. And I met them there. I did a lot of extra things for her that I might not have to do for a client who lives here. This is a first for me. At the closing, the title company, when they were sending me over the documents to review, they said, okay, so she wanted it to be a surprise at closing, and we were still like a week before closing. But her name was Sherry. Sherry wanted you to have an extra $1,000 on top of your 3% commission because you did so much for her.
Wow.
I asked her for a review
Yeah.
because I was like, I know I did a great job for her. She obviously appreciated it. She had no problem paying for it. And she will say some amazing things about me. So that will help me when clients are referred to me. If someone Google searches me and like, I want to know what people said about her before I call her, that I'm trying to get better, but I'm still not great. So, but reviews are helpful because people will look there. Okay, we got to get through some of this stuff. There's an example, and I do ask people if I can have their permission to use it in my marketing. So like in my listing presentation, I'll use some of their reviews, like when we do a listing consultation. So, I don't know that I word it quite like that, but it's okay. When people are.
People say that you ask for a review before closing.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know how you would
My favorite time to ask is when we go under contract, especially when we go under contract at an amazing price that they never expected. So I had a client that this was at the peak of the craziness with COVID. We got their house under contract for $105,000 more than they were asking. And what they were asking was a fair price. Like we weren't like low, $105,000 over what they were asking. We had 2 offers, 100 plus over what they were asking. And honestly, like those buyers were stupid. Like there was no reason for that. But those sellers, like when I go over to sit down with them and review the offers, and like I'm showing them the pros and cons of this offer versus that offer, that's a great time to ask for a review because they are thrilled. They are super excited. Yes, that's a record for me. It was crazy. And it was a house 2 doors down from my own house. I was like, who's buying this house? So, but sellers, yeah, we want to make sure sellers are happy. And then
reviews are so important, so powerful.
They are.
At least they are for me.
Yeah.
I always check reviews.
Yep.
On Amazon, everything.
My fridge died like 2 weeks ago. I don't know a fridge repairman, right? I don't know if my fridge can be repaired. I don't know if I went to get ice out of the ice maker and water came out and I was like, what's happening here? I'm like, oh, we had a problem. So I went online, looked at reviews. One of the reviews was like the company, there were a lot of good ones, but then there was like one bad one. And I was like, well, I'm going to give them the benefit of the doubt. And I'm just going to call them and see how I feel, just talking to them. I called, left a voicemail, never got a call back, ever. Like to this day, weeks later. The other guy I called that had really, really good reviews and no bad ones. So I was like, maybe that person was just mean-spirited because you never know, right? So I called this other guy. He had great reviews. He was amazing. I would totally refer him, but.
And it really is customer service all the way.
Yeah. And now we don't have to go out to the garage to get our food. But it makes a difference. It made a big difference for me because I didn't know anyone. And if you don't know anyone, then you're looking for that. Even if someone referred them, I still would check them out,
My son-in-law, he owns a epoxy flooring business.
Yeah.
He's got almost 500 reviews.
Wow.
And they're all
That's amazing.
And it's like, what?
Yeah, that's amazing.
Gosh, dang.
That- It's
You
awesome.
just made me think.
Mhm.
I gotta talk to him and go, okay, how are you doing it?
Right. And we can coach them a little bit on what would be important to include in that review, but usually I try to just let them do it on their own, that they're going to say something meaningful rather than Amber was the best. Like
Yeah.
it just, you give me some tangible part of the transaction. So, okay, so like buyers, you could say that it went really smooth. They were impressed with how you dealt with things, of the problems that came up. You prepared them, you communicated with them, those kind of things. My favorite ones are, I had a client that I loved this. She said, Amber was aggressive without being obnoxious. And I was like, yes, that is the perfect like balance of like, yeah, be aggressive without being obnoxious. You can be persistent without being a pest, you know? So, okay. Ahas, we are gonna run out of time. What do you guys think? Anything?
Everything you do is always so wonderful.
We've covered a lot of stuff here. And
So what do you love most about real estate?
I love that it's different every day. I love that I help people. Like, I really do love that. Like, when I was in college, I was studying sociology. I thought I'd end up being like a counselor. And I tell people this sometimes when they're like fighting over the house, like, I like this and I hate that. Oh, we're sorry we're fighting in from you. I'm like, it's okay. I went to school. I was thinking I was going to be a counselor. This works. Like, I love that about it. I love that I get to help people with everything through that process.
You don't have to do any, how do I say, prospecting anymore. Or do you? No.
I never have.
Yeah.
Don't tell anyone.
No,
On the recording,
No,
don't.
because I want to get.
I mean, I keep in touch with my
And I-
clients
and I
and
do know.
but that's it.
It's just like, no guts, no glory, Scarlett. If you
Right.
gotta go out there.
Make it
and
happen. Yeah, you have to at the
you
beginning,
gotta build
for
that
sure.
base beginning,
Yeah, it
and I go,
takes time.
every realtor who's real successful,
Mhm.
they all had to pay a price.
Yeah.
So I go, oh, come on.
You got
Don't be
this.
afraid,
You got
just
this.
go.
Yeah, you got this. It'll all come together. It does take time. It takes time to build, but being consistent and being in front of people is how you build it. So, all right, we're going to have to push through quickly. So what buyers want most from their agent is to help them find the right home. My first time I ever bought a used car, I went to a couple used car dealerships and I was young and I was like, so car has to have 4 doors and it has to be automatic. I can drive a stick, but I didn't want to, right? So I was like, 4 doors, automatic. Those are my requirements. Don't care what color, don't care what brand. I just want 4 doors and an automatic. First car dealership I went to, the guy was like, well, let me see. And he takes me over to a 2-door stick shift. Like, you heard nothing I said. Like, listen to your clients. That's our job in helping them find the right home, is hearing what they say. And then obviously helping them negotiate the terms of the sale. But look how much that is important of finding the right home is listening to what they say, and then helping negotiate and other. I wonder what other is. So that's what they want. And then these are some good questions to ask when you're talking to buyers and asking questions about what's important to them. Like, you have to be really careful with fair housing questions because you don't want to seem like you're discriminating at all, but who's going to be living in the home with you? Is it just you? Is it, whatever? You get some interesting answers.
I did that when I went on my first tour of looking at homes, and I asked the realtor, I said, so the people that live here, are they, and he goes,
Yeah. So what are some non-negotiables that they have to have in their home? And this can change. People may tell you, I absolutely have to have a 3-car garage. And then they ask you, like, literally, I'm showing a house at noon today that These people have told me that for years. They've been casually looking, and this house that they want to see is a 2-car garage. They may buy it. You know, the other things may overcompensate for not having the 3-car garage. Things change. People change their mind, and that's okay. But this is a funny one too. My sister-in-law, they moved to Pennsylvania, Phillies, and came back to Utah. But in Pennsylvania, they lived on like 2 acres. Coming back to Utah in a neighborhood, they were like, we cannot do anything less than a 1/4 acre, non-negotiable. Can't do anything less than 0.25. Like, we have to have some land. I'm like, okay. So I set my search criteria in the MLS, 0.25 or larger. Literally showed them 100 homes. Literally showed them 100 homes. And they find things wrong with every one of them. And, you know, finally, the house they bought, they called me and said, hey, again, this dates me quite a bit. We saw this in the paper. And we want to go see this house. How come we haven't seen it yet? How come it didn't come up on any of our searches? And I was like, I don't know. Why didn't it? It's in the area. It's got the number of bedrooms. I pull it up on the MLS. It's 0.24. It's like a smidge difference. And they bought that house. But that told me, like, okay, I can be a little bit flexible on that, because even though they're saying it has to be 0.25, what if it's 0.24? You know?
Well, I can just throw you a no loop. A friend of mine, well, she was my best friend at the time, but I put 2 of my best friends together, the realtor and the buyer, and the buyer said, we don't want to go over 450, 500. And I knew that they could apply for more.
Right.
And I told my realtor friend, I said, no, I said, go higher. And she said, I can't do that.
Right.
And I said, no, you can. I promise you. I said, there's a house down the street. I said, it's 720.
Oh, wow.
And guess
That's a big
what?
difference. They
wanted
bought it.
that house, and they tried to take her out of the
Oh.
deal because they said, well, you didn't show it to us. Like, I'm the one that came to you to say. I wanted
Right.
it. So they tried to cut her out of the deal. And
Wow. People
you
are
never-
interesting.
you never know.
Yeah, people are very interesting. So good questions to ask, and always asking, like, why is that important to you? Like, find out why, why are those your top 5 non-negotiables? Why is that important that you have to have that yard or whatever? Well, we have to have this, we have to have that. Do they have a preference for when it was built? Do they want it move-in condition? Or this is my favorite one, the favorite lie buyers tell, we want a fixer-upper. Because we've seen, you know, Chip and, what's her name? Chip and Joanna, and it looks so fun. And then you show them 6 fixer-uppers and they're like, wow, that looks like a lot of work. So I was like, well, let me just show you a house that doesn't need as much work. And let's just see. They bought it. They didn't want a fixer-upper. They wanted the TV show. Okay. Those are some good questions to ask. So reasons why people buy a house is their lives change or their world changes. They are going to, like, their family changes, they're have more kids, they're going to have less kids in the house, they're gonna get divorced, get married, all the reasons people buy a house. So, this was my favorite one. Actually, it's the same people from Idaho that I was just talking about earlier. That I had to be able to put my personal preferences aside, because what they liked, I thought was garbage, but they loved it. Like, we walk into these houses that were like early 90s with the brass ugly fixtures and like oak cabinets. And I'm like, to me, I'm thinking this house needs to be updated. And they were like, I love it. And I was like, oh, I had to be really conscious of my own opinions, keeping those to myself. It's hard. It was hard. But I was like, I have to remember they like these ugly light fixtures. They like it. That's on them. And if they like it, then I like it for them. Right. So it is hard. It is hard. Hey, thanks for coming. Yeah, you bet. Like,
yeah.
All right, and then keep going here. Tough conversations, fiduciary relationships.
So are all your transactions? How are they? All unique?
Oh yeah, I'm still learning things on every transaction. Every transaction is different. It's rare that I come into a transaction where it just goes smoothly and everything's great. Because yeah, everything has its challenges and they're all different. This deal that I just put together in Pleasant Grove, something came up on it and that in 28 years in real estate, I've never seen before. Never, like never come across it. So you just never know.
That makes it fun.
It does. It makes it interesting and challenging and like you continue to learn all the time. So tough conversations. This is I usually try and let the lender do a lot of the tough part, but please don't go buy a boat while we're under contract on a house. Please don't quit your job while we're under contract on a house or change jobs or, once I had a client that was getting divorced and they were like, well, should I wait till the divorce is final to buy? I was like, I don't know. You need to check with your attorney on that. And the attorney told him, absolutely do not buy until the divorce is final. So again, like that's a difficult conversation. I want to sell them a house and I want to sell them a house now, but that could put them in a lot of problem. So, okay. Anything else you guys can think of on that? I'm going to cruise through because we have a lot more still. And I do have to show a house at noon. So can't go too much over. All right. So we went through the needs analysis. We talked to them about what they want. Showing homes is a process just like anything else. Obviously, you need to make, like if you do have a client that you're going out with, you want to make appointments. You want to do it in enough time that you can get responses back from the agents. And this is one of the things I'll tell my clients as we're walking through houses. Like, I will tell you things that, not things that are my personal preference, but things that might affect the resale. So if you love this house and it's the perfect house for you, that's fine. But the fact that it backs up to a 3-lane highway, just remember in 3 years when you call me to sell it, you're not going to get the same price as your neighbor over there on the cul-de-sac.
Okay, I showed a house for Susie a
Mhm.
couple weeks ago and the clients came in and they started, picking the house apart and saying, oh, don't like that there's no trees. And
You can,
I agree.
Mm.
Am I not to agree with them?
no, I mean, that's,
I don't want to.
but trees can be
I don't wanna
planted.
break
But trees can be planted. Like, I always look for the flip of it. Like, oh yeah, there aren't very many trees, but trees aren't that expensive, put in the trees you want. Yeah, like there's a way that at least you don't have to deal with those ugly trees that somebody chose that, you can pick your own.
So turn the lemons into
Mhm.
instead of the green.
I mean, there's certain things I agree with them. Like they're like, it smells like 18 cats. I agree with that. It does. But it's fixable. Anything's fixable. So, okay. We're gonna cruise through. Show only the best properties for your buyer. How do you know what's best? Is you've asked a lot of questions. I like to print out from the MLS. If I say we're going to go out and see 5 houses in one day, I like to print out the full client report from the MLS and give that to them so they can take notes on it. And I'll even tell them if they're in my car and they're like, okay, we're seeing 6 houses and we walked in one that they're absolutely, I say, give me that sheet. And I grab it and I crumple it up and throw it on the ground. That house wasn't for you. And they're like, you're right, it wasn't. I'm like, don't even keep it. You don't need to make notes on it because it wasn't for you. So that's just like helping them weed it out, because otherwise they're going to go home with 6 sheets and go, now which one was this one? Just weed it out. And as you're showing houses, even okay, of those first 2 we saw, which one did you like better? So they're already kind of going through that process of weeding it out in their mind. Does that make sense? But I'm also going to be honest and point out things that are potential issues for resale, or if I see something that's alarming.
So that the one that you think they're going to like the most is the last house.
Nope.
No.
I put it first.
But first.
First, because everything else then is going to pale in comparison. If I think that's the house they're going to buy, and I really truly believe this is the house for them, and they go in and they love it, Then they go to the next house and they're like, this one isn't as nice as that last one. Then they go to the third one and they're like, oh no, that first one. They're constantly comparing to their perfect one. Or they may walk into that first one and be like, oh, it looked so much better in pictures. Then we know like, okay, that one's not necessarily what we thought it was. But I always try and choose the one I think they're gonna like the best first, because it also gives me good feedback. Like I always tell me, people are funny. They're funny. They're like, oh, I don't like this. Oh, sorry. And I'm like, why are you sorry to me? It's not my house. Like, tell me, I need to know these things so I can help you. Like, so I'll tell them that. Like, be honest with me. I need to know. But they're scared to tell you. Like, they don't want to hurt your feelings. And I'm like, you're not hurting my feelings. I don't live here.
You
So,
tell them not to say anything when they're in the
oh
house.
yeah. Especially nowadays. Like I do. In the house or even in the yard, I'm like, wait till we get in the car, because those cameras will follow you and they will hear what you're saying. Oh yeah. Oh yeah. I've had clients, sellers call me up and say, she just said this and that's not true. And I'm like, I can't call her and say, hey, by the way, you just said such and such, and my clients heard you say it over their cameras. And
Gosh, and that's just,
but they do, they listen to everything. They're listening. Even if you can't see them sometimes. And if I have a house that I know has cameras in it, I always put in the agent remarks, there are cameras, be careful what you say, because I want the agents to not embarrass all of us by saying something really stupid. Or like I have had clients literally, they know this is like their third time in the house. The cameras are very visible and I have it in the listing remarks for the agent. Cameras, be aware. And they're talking about their negotiations in the kitchen. They're like, well, what if we offered this? My clients call me and said, they just said they would offer this, and just tell them no. Like, we won't go that low. They're shooting themselves in the foot, really. So I always tell them, if the people are there, like, just be careful. You can be polite, but you can either kill our negotiating power by liking it too much. Like, absolutely, this is my house. I can't live without this house. You know, like, you can kill our negotiating power. There might be some things we can get that you might not know about. I don't necessarily include recent comps until we get to the house they like the most, or the two, or whatever. So, but you could, I mean, just be knowledgeable about it. Okay.
for the money in the house.
Yeah, you got to be really careful. You can, I just tell them, you can be polite. You can say, oh, this is nice, you know, things like that, but not overly anxious or things like that. So I keep a little thing in my car. This is all things that come up. I don't keep paperwork because nobody does. No, this is from Ignite. I don't keep paperwork. Nobody does written paperwork anymore, but I do have like hand sanitizer, a little first aid kit. I do have a tape measure. No, I just sent, usually it's all DocuSign. So I don't keep it with me in the car. Otherwise my car would be loaded down with all this stuff. But I do have tissues. I have like hand sanitizer. Back in the day, I had masks. When they were impossible to get, I'd made my mother-in-law make me masks, so I would have them for my clients. Yeah, like some of these are, I've never even heard that before. So your business card, I think some people don't think it's worth doing, but I think it's common courtesy if you're showing a home that's occupied to leave your business card so they know who was in their home. I just think it's a courtesy to the seller. It's not like you're, you know, doing anything else. But I have snacks in my car. I always keep water, especially when people are coming from out of state. And I'm like, hey, if you're moving here from sea level, you need to drink a lot of water. Like your altitude sickness is real. And then safety. Obviously, you're not going to meet some strange person at a vacant house. People are weird. People are very, very strange. So even when my kids were littler, if I even felt a little bit uneasy, like I would put my kids in the car and just like park them on the street, just so someone knew where I was. And this client would see that, like, you're showing a house to somebody you've never met before and they want to meet at the house, you know, just so they know somebody's watching. Even if it's a kid, they are not as likely to do the weird things. So so our job is to sell homes, not just show them. my sister-in-law with her 100 homes. Like, seriously, my job is not to take you out to see every house that ever existed in the valley. Okay. Let's see. Okay, so yeah, this happens too. You show the buyer like 2 houses that you think are going to meet their criteria, and they hate them both. And you're like, okay, let's regroup a little bit. What am I missing? You told me you wanted XYZ. These homes have XYZ. And it's fine that you don't like them, but I just need to know, what did I miss? Like, how do I meet that need better? And sometimes it's just they're looking for the impossible. And you have to let them know that. My brother-in-law, my sister's husband, they've moved a lot for his job. And he's like, he's a computer guy, like tech stuff. And he's like, I always tried to watch the realtor like put in her password on the MLS because I wanted to get on the MLS myself later because I didn't believe she was giving me everything. I'm like, why would she do that? Why would she not give you the homes you want to see? But maybe you're not telling her the truth about what it is you want in a house. So why buyers hesitate? They're afraid. It's a big commitment, and or there's some minor thing they don't like. Again, telling them, hey, that's fixable. I remember still, like, when I was young in the business and clients walked through a house that needed to be painted. Like, it was clearly needed to be painted. And they're like, well, we want to offer 50,000 less. Like, do you really think it's going to cost $50,000 to paint this little 1,200 square foot house? Like, let's be real. You know, it might cost 5,000 if you hired someone, if you do it yourself, you know. So like, trying to put things in perspective for them. They don't feel like they've seen enough homes. When the market's slower, people get that. They're like, well, I've only seen 3. I want to see more. Okay, why? And what are we missing? Again, like asking those questions. Yep. And I will never try and interfere with that. Like, absolutely. Like, if that's what you feel like you need, then I'm going to do everything I can to make you feel comfortable. But here's the thing. We may miss out on this house. And if it's the house for you, that's fine. We can go under contract and you still have due diligence to back out. You're not going to lose anything. You're not going to lose anything. But if you think this might be the house for you, and still some people are like, nope,
We may miss out
on this house because other people are going to make an offer. And if you do make an offer and you get accepted, you still have your due diligence time period to back out for any reason. It does not matter what the reason is. So you can still do your praying, you can still do your soul searching, whatever you need to do to make sure this is the right house for you. But that comes up. It comes up a lot.
Well, we need to go pray about it. He goes, okay, let's know that.
Yeah, I know. You can do that. Like, whatever works for you and whatever you're comfortable with. But I would never try and talk somebody out of getting their own good feeling about a house. Like, I had a client, we were under contract. We worked so hard. It was a bank-owned house, worked so hard. They're like, we only want to buy it if we can get it for this number, which was pretty low. And we got it. Like, we negotiated back and forth and back and forth, finally got to that number. We were under contract, we were doing inspections, and she called me up one morning and said, I cannot buy that house. I had a nightmare last night about that house and I cannot buy it. What am I going to say? I'm not going to talk her out of that. You don't have a good feeling about it. We're moving on. Exactly. I don't want to be responsible for that. But always going back to their motivation. What do they need? What do they want? Be their fiduciary. Try and allay their fears, you know, showing them that things can be fixed. You know, that's a $2 piece of plastic. We can fix that, you know. Little things like that sometimes just add up into people's head to where they think it's just going to cost way too much to do all these repairs. Okay, and cost of waiting. All right. Anything? It's hard when there's just 2. I know we're going through it kind of fast too, because we are running out of
And
time.
again, Bruce, speak up. I'm the one talking.
I have questions.
Okay, you're good. All right. So we are getting back to sellers now. What sellers want most from their agent. They want to make sure we know what we're doing, that we're pricing the home competitively, that we market it properly, and we help them sell it in the time frame that they need to. Like, they want advice from us on what they need to do to get it ready to sell. They do. They want that. They want us to go in there and say, you really need to fix that before we get it on the market. Like, it's truly, oh yeah. Oh yeah. I'll ask questions like, hey, it looks like there's been a water leak here. Is that accurate? Or like, what's going on here? And they're like, oh yeah, it leaked like 20 years ago. We just never painted. Please go paint that, because it's going to scare a buyer. No. No.
Somebody said that they, I don't know if it was Susie Clyde or.
Yeah, I know some people do, like they'll work out a deal where they get paid at closing, paid back for the repairs or whatever. I just haven't done that. Mm-mm. So again, sellers, most of the time, it's harder.
They don't. I guess that's more of the question. If they don't listen to you and your house is a mess, or you need to tell them, you need to get rid of at least 50% of your things.
Yeah. That's,
all I know is Susie's houses are just.
they look great. Yep. And that's when, if I really feel like they're not hearing me, I'll bring in a stager. And then it's not me. It's a third party that's like, you need to get rid of this, 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 and this. And she's blunt, very more than I am. Yeah, I do. Usually. It varies. It varies in cost, but it can make a big difference on how quickly and how much the house sells for. Yeah, so I just tell them, roughly, it's usually around $1,800 to do the full staging. And she brings in furniture and curtains and everything. Like, she does the whole thing. So it's worth it to me. Okay, we got to cruise through. So, yeah, you bet. So sellers' lives change or their world changes again. Like, something happened in their life or something happened in their world that makes them have to move. For one of my clients right now, it's that their neighbor basically picked a fight, and she's like, I don't want to live next to him anymore. Done. Peace. I've put up with him for years. I'm done. Game over. Right? So we just never know what that is going to be, or when that's going to come. So these are things that sellers can control. They can control the price and the condition of their home. And this is what they cannot control the market. We can't control the market. And the biggest things I tell them they can do is declutter and depersonalize. Like, those are the biggest things they can do. Smells are huge.
When I have gone into homes and they're not too personalized
at all. Yeah. Yeah. And I tell people, I'm like, you still have to live here. So you want it to be comfortable, but you know how it used to be really fashionable for people to like take a wall and like put the vinyl lettering on it with their last name. I'm like, take that down. That is you staking your claim on this house. We don't want it to be the Smith's house anymore. We want the buyers to walk in and be like, this could be my house. So take it down. You're staking your claim and your claim is gone. You want to sell, right? So sellers can control those things. Okay. Right? But you need to do it in a tactful way, but at the same time, I'm trying to help you get the best that we possibly can in this market for your house. So, okay. Again, we talked about this before, great communication. And, oh yeah. Oh, I don't know. Okay. Yeah. And then fair housing. Fair housing's a big deal. Do you guys know some of the classes that could be considered fair housing issues?
Don't ask about who lives here.
So I'll tell you some of the ones that I've gotten in like letters, like, we want to buy your house because I'm a single mom and I need this. Yeah. That's a marital status. That is a fair housing. I cannot give that to my seller. Back in the day, they used to include photos with the picture of their family. Like, here's my cute family with our 4 blonde little beautiful kids. And then no, that was a nationwide thing. And then another couple coming along with, we're from India, and they might feel that they've been discriminated against. I tell my seller clients, if I get those kind of letters from buyers, I will not give them to you till closing. If you want to see them, I'll give them to you at closing, but we cannot. And if we have, like, I won't even show them sometimes the buyer's name, because that can be, you've got Johnson Smith, this, and then you've got one that's you can't pronounce. That could be discrimination even. So I just number if we have multiple offers, I'll just number the offers and put them in a spreadsheet, because then nobody can claim that we didn't, we discriminated against them. But the client also has to comply. Like, you cannot say, oh, I don't want to sell to anybody from, whatever ethnicity or whatever background or whatever. They cannot. It's part of the listing agreement. So I do say we have to comply with fair housing. It is not negotiable. Like, you can choose who you want to sell to, but it can't be based on any of the protected classes. So marital status, race, gender, there's so many, like there's a lot of them. So you just have to assume. We want to look at the money. Do you have the money? Can you qualify for the loan? No commission is worth your reputation. Again, the KW, what's it called? WITC, or I can't remember. Y4C2Ts, that's what it is. So there's no commission worth your integrity. Marketing plan for listings. Capitalize on your listings. Listings are awesome because you get to control the market a little bit more, especially with all the talk right now of like commission lawsuits and this and that and the other. As a listing agent, I get to control that. I get to say I'm offering 3% commission to the buyer's agent. I'm not, not having to be told I have to accept 1% or whatever the market will bear. There's not a number again. It's all negotiable. But okay, message you put out there is important. Like, what are they going to get when they contact you? Okay, so I have actually had this happen. How you put things on the MLS reflects back on you. I actually had a builder call me one time and say, I see you have listed homes in this area, and I like how your listings look. I like the pictures. I like the descriptions. Will you come interview with me to take over this subdivision? I was like, I literally said, am I being punked? Like, am I, like, that doesn't happen in real estate. But he had a subdivision. He was starting in that area. In the end, I actually turned him down because he wanted me to sit in a model every day from 3 to 8. And I had little kids. And I was like, that doesn't work for me. I'm a mom first, and that just doesn't work for me. But the fact that he called, like, that was a huge compliment to me, that how my stuff looks and how professional it looks makes a difference. People recognize it. And like, because in my neighborhood, like, people see my listings over and over, people do know that I'm a professional. So, okay.
Do you know what you did?
What do you mean?
Do you know that you're the one that people go to for out of state?
Oh, relocation? Oh, I'm not like the. I have, like, at my old company, I did a lot of corporate relocation. And then when I came over here, one of those companies that does corporate relocation followed me here. And it just so happened that that company was taking all the employees for this huge construction company that was building the Facebook data center out in Eagle Mountain. And I got to help like dozens of people buy, and then a lot of them 2 years later sell, some of them 4 years later sell, like, it's been a 5-year, 6-year process, and I've dozens and dozens of deals from that. Yeah. So it's how you treat people. It goes, I mean, the first guy, when they called me and they said, will you take a buyer referral? I'm like, yeah, sure, whatever. Little did I know, when I asked him what he did for a living, he's like, well, I'm in construction. We have this project, but it hasn't even been announced yet, so I can't even tell you what it is. I'm like, oh, okay. 2 days later on the news, Facebook data center is being built in Eagle Mountain. I'm like, oh, that's his job. But he was the head of this whole project. I had no idea. He's just Joe. Just, No, like the company that he was working with called me and said, will you take him? Because I've worked with them before, the company, the relocation company. So it's fun. I like it because those buyers, they'll come in for 2 or 3 days and they're like, they have to buy a house. Like they're not going to kick around for a year. They need to buy a house. They need a place to live because their job starts in 60 days or 30 days and they need somewhere. So, okay. Signage.
And you really serve
Oh yeah. Like I make sure they have what they
them. You
need.
give them Rolls Royce treatment.
They're treated well. It was funny.
You pick them up, you don't.
I picked them up at their hotel. I took them out for the whole day, made sure I had snacks and waters and stuff. This is funny because we had the whole day planned. We had about 10 houses to see, ready to go. And this is the 3rd house. And they're like, we like this. This is the one. And I'm like, are you sure? Like, we've only seen 2 houses. Well, this is the same house that I recently sold that went 105 over asking. I was like, okay, so we just met, right? This is the 3rd house. We've been together for maybe an hour now. Like, so how are we friends? And they're like, what do you mean? Like, because my house is 2 doors down. Are we friends? Can we be neighbors? And they're like, oh yeah, yeah. Because they were pretty reserved and not very talkative and like quiet. And they referred me so much business.
So do you get a contract with them before you go out? If you're doing clients that are relocating and you're serving them in such a.
It depends on the situation. In that situation, like I knew they were going to use me because their company told them to use me. Like I didn't feel like I needed it right up front, but I explained it to them before you go out showing houses. It is required by law. Yeah, it is required by state law.
So I didn't know.
You have to have it signed and you're supposed to have it signed before you write an offer. So before we write an offer, I always get it signed. But not like for that situation where I met them at their hotel and we're going to go see 10 houses. Like I'm not going to, hey, can we sit down in your hotel room for a few minutes so I can explain to you? But I do it in the car, like as we're driving, like, hey, this is how it works, So yeah, I just say it's required in Utah that we disclose who's working for who. And I'm your buyer's agent, so you need to sign this paper.
So they're just like, yeah, I get it signed, but if you want, you can break it, like, can't you?
Yeah. You can always
Like,
cancel it. Uh-huh.
Yeah, because it's usually 6 months, right?
Yeah. Well, you can do whatever time period you want. Yeah.
So if it's not working,
Right.
yes.
Totally.
Well, I like being able to shift the responsibility onto the state.
Yeah, it's required by the state that it's in writing who works for who. No, most people don't mind. A couple of people like me and my husband, when we were young and unsure, we didn't know what we would be signing. So give them a minute. It's okay. Signage, the rule is if your sign is up, you have 1 business day to get it on the MLS. So you can't go put your sign up a week before the listing goes live, right? So, all right, it's boring. It has my name and my phone number and it's red and white. Like it's very minimal. Nope, I don't.
I don't like this.
I hate my picture. I hate having my picture taken. I hate looking at pictures of me. So no way, I'm not putting my picture on it. But yeah, I think it's more about you than your client. I want it to be about my client. And I tell my clients, like, if you hire me to sell your house, I want to sell your house, not the one down the street, not like I'm not putting my sign up in your yard so buyers call me. I want to sell your house and I'm going to do my job to sell your house. So that I feel like it's a little more like glamour shot, kind of like it's about you instead of them. That's just my opinion. Yeah, for sure. Yeah. And people over time, like just from seeing you in a certain neighborhood or whatever, they'll get to know your face. So, okay, sorry, we got like 5 minutes because I do have to show a house in a few. So, okay, co-agents. This has just happened to me this week. So I had this listing, it was really hot. We had 5 offers. You start the process of negotiating with this other agent before you even walk in the door. So this one agent, like, she was calling me and she was kind of annoying. Like she's like kept calling me over and over about dumb little things. And I was just like, I kind of hope her client doesn't win this offer situation because she's kind of hard to work with. Like it just isn't fun, my listing.
Okay.
Yeah. So be careful, like when you communicate with agents, that you are, not, yeah, just not stepping over those lines of, oh, this is one of my favorite questions though. Is it not working? So I like to ask when I'm calling, like a lot of it's done online now. You don't even talk to the agent. You just schedule a showing, right? But sometimes I'll still call the agent like ahead of time, like, hey, I just scheduled a showing on your listing. I'm wondering, this is my favorite question. You might want to write it down. I'm wondering what else you can tell me that is not on the MLS. Because then they're like, why are you just calling to bug me? You're not. You're like, no, I want to know more. What else can you tell me that's not on the MLS? I read the whole MLS. I did read it. But what else can you tell me about this house? I had one agent literally say to me, well, I know it's overpriced.
Oh, goody, goody gumdrop.
I didn't even think it was overpriced. My clients were prepared to make an offer at the list price. But when he said that, we dropped our offer 50 grand and we got it. He told me that. So ask those open-ended questions that like they'll tell you things they should not tell you. Like that agent should have never said those things to me. So, oh yeah. Oh yeah, but it helped me. So, yeah, so you
Good. I want to know how to ask open-ended questions, because I don't know if I do.
yeah, that's just, what else can you tell me? Leave it there. And just stop and be silent. And I waited. Like it was kind of uncomfortable for a second. He was like, I don't know, but then they spit it out. I think it's overpriced. Like, all right then. All righty.
That's
Guys, we-
so hard sometimes to just be
Silent. I know.
quiet.
It is
They
hard.
say, "Word, don't be quiet."
At that point, what if you said like, oh, you've had like other people walk through, like, even if they haven't, like, can you still say that?
You don't want to lie. You have to be honest. You have to be honest with whatever's going on. But yeah, I mean, you don't want to put
But
your
tell me, it's from
fancyfortunecookies.com and they're coconut flavored. So they're good. I see the regular ones taste like cardboard to me now after I've had these. All right, guys, what do you think? Anything that has changed in your opinions or?
I think it just gives more insight, more detail.
A lot of,
what we need to do.
yeah, a lot of little stories in there, but that's the thing about doing this for 28 years. I've got lots of stories.
I'm sure Drew's a pain, we want to hear it.
Yeah. So
We learned.
awesome. Well, you guys are awesome.
I learned so much. I
Oh,
just want
good.
you to know that. And
Thank you.
not to get too personal, but you were saying things that I needed to hear right when you said it.
Hmm,
So
Good.
I
I'm
was
glad.
relating to
I'm glad.
it.
Good. I'm glad. I'm glad I can help. So if you guys ever have a question, just reach out to me.
You're awesome. Thank you.
You're welcome. I don't know how to shut that
What
down.
is your
So
number?
it's 801-717-0